Hi, and welcome to Dustin Expo Speakerbox Conversations. My name is Gordon, and I'm sitting here with Emmanuel from Asus. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
And you're sitting here because you are the expert, the lead expert of building gaming computers.
You could say that. Yeah.
And that's what I want to know. How do I build the perfect gaming computer? And I thought we should start talking about selecting the parts. And I'm going to leave it to you there.
All right.
How do I start?
Well, it's straightforward. I think the first thing you need to consider is kind of the size you want from your machine. So are you in need of a really compact machine? Like the small factor machines right now is very popular to build, but you need to ask yourself, is that something you need or is something that you want, basically? And that gets a question in terms of how much you can upgrade it, and how much actual power you can have in your computer. So looking at the size of your PC is the first step you want to take, I would say.
Can you actually build a gaming computer in a small size?
Oh, yes, you can. And that's actually becoming very increasingly popular these days. So there's a lot of sizes. There are ATX, which is the standard version. That's the standard chassis that you see. And this is still probably the most popular one. But it's a little bit of a more larger machine. So I would say especially like in Stockholm, that's a trend that you want to have something really small for your your setup.
Apartment.
Right. So maybe you take to consider the square meter of the computers in your apartment is actually a part of it. So and that's especially what I do living in the city. It's okay, I need something small. You can take up that much space. Or maybe also you want to have it on your desk basically. And then you also want something smaller.
So what do you lose if you choose to build a smaller one?
Right. So these days it's not as much as it used to be, basically. So the sizes that exist is ATX, as I mentioned. There are MATX, which is just slightly smaller, and there is Mini ITX, which is a lot smaller. It's only a fourth of the size of the standard chassis. So what you can lose, what is the upgradability mostly. So if you want to do double graphics cards in SLI, that wouldn't be a possibility. And you also need to make some more compromises in terms of thermal solution, your cooling. So you need to think that through a little bit more. You might not want to do so much overclocking and such with the smaller chassis.
Okay, so you start with the size and then you choose what?
Well, I would probably do MITX in this case, but I think it's easier to speak regarding the ATX chassis, which is more the standard version today.
And do you start with the motherboard after that, or the computer? How do you come up with what kind of components do you want?
Right.
So what do you need?
Right.
What is the most important parts?
So the spine of the computer is usually called the motherboard. So that's usually the first thing you have a look at, and you combine the motherboard and the processor, right? And of course, today there are two manufacturers you can choose from in terms of CPU, which is Intel and AMD. And there's a lot of almost a feud going on by its fans. Which should you choose? Should you go with AMD? Should you go with Intel? And some people are almost fanatic in their choice of this. And it's quite a hard choice today. AMD has gaining a lot of ground. Intel is the market leader in that sense. But it's in very general terms, AMD has the benefit of that you get more performance when you do multitasking, and Intel has more performance per core, meaning that if you're doing something certain games only uses one core and such. So that's a lot of bigger conversation actually, which you should choose from. But that's the first thing you want to look at. And when you choose your processor, you also choose your motherboard in that sense.
So how important is the processor for gaming, or is it all the graphic cards?
Right. It's actually a little bit increasingly important these days. So they handle certain things. So your physics in your game, things blow up and calculations and a lot of players in the battlefield. Then the processor gets increasingly important. So in the past, if you bought a super good processor back in 2008 or something like that, you could have used that for many, many, many years. But now recently starting to actually bottleneck the graphics cards. It's getting increasingly important.
Okay, so the processor is still important, but maybe not the most important? Or how should you think could you go with a cheaper processor, or is that just cutting the life length of your computer too much?
No, it's not cutting your life length in that sense. So what we discussed earlier is that if you your processor has a longer longevity in terms of gaming than your graphics card. So if you want to build a computer that you can keep for many years and just upgrade the graphics card, then it's a good idea to go with a great processor, because that you could keep for many generations. While the graphics card is going to be obsolete in a shorter amount of time. So that's something you could always upgrade.
If you want to play the latest games, how often should you upgrade your graphic cards, would you say?
Right. That's also longevity is actually increasing over the years. It also depends on what kind of monitor you use. So if you're using a 4K monitor with 144 hertz, yeah, then you could upgrade every year basically. But if you want to do like
Could
Full
and
HD,
should.
well, I say you could, but you could do it and you could have some benefit from it basically. Well,
So that's how fast it actually goes. Like if you upgrade graphic cards every year, you will notice the difference.
you will, but if you're doing like a full HD screen and you just want 60 hertz, no, you're not going to feel the difference in the same way.
Okay, so that's choosing the parts. We should probably talk about RAM as well,
Right.
memory. How much do you need? Is it important at all?
Well, basically, that's always been almost a misconception that you need a lot of RAM. Like, in the more RAM you have, the faster your PC goes, which is not really true. So most applications and most games in particular has a cap how much it could use. That cap has been increased a lot over the years. So for a very long time, 8 gigabytes of RAM was enough, and you could never use more. Then you have to do something like if you're playing World of Warcraft and you have 10 different systems running at the same time, sure, then you need it. But if you're playing one game, it wouldn't matter. Today, 16 gigabyte of RAM is a good way to go, basically.
Yeah, because that's something you can notice when you look at computers that are pre-built.
Yeah.
Like most only have 16 gig RAM, and that it has been so for very long
Right,
now, for
right.
many years. So I'm a bit like, but why? Why? You could have more. You could have more now.
Sure, but for the basic user who would play games, you would not feel any difference. When you build your own PC, you should make sure to do dual channel. You should do 2 RAM slots so they can actually work better together and you get more performance. So don't
It's
just
better
use
with
one.
2 instead
Yeah.
of 1.
Right.
Is it better with 4
no.
than 2?
No, it doesn't matter. So you should do 2 basically, and then you can upgrade it to 4 if you need more in the future.
So now we know what you need, but how do you choose the right components that makes a stable computer?
If you're thinking like the stability and the durability so far,
Yeah.
okay. Sure, as an Asus spokesman, I would of course say that you should you do some research on what components to buy, like in terms of motherboards especially. That's one of the most critical parts. Like your CPU is very unlikely to break down on you. The motherboard handles basically everything in the PC, so you should really do research. And same goes for memory basically, and make sure that you have a memory that is supported by the motherboards and so forth.
Can you check things like that on, like, for say now Asus website and check which kind of memories
Right.
are the ones you recommend or so?
Right, there are compatibility lists on almost every motherboard manufacturer that you can look at, and that's actually a good thing to do, especially doing like Ryzen builds right now. The compatibility is very important.
So you can't just choose, oh, this motherboard and has this kind of slots for RAM, and then you just take any RAM and put it together. It should work.
It
but
should
maybe
work.
not
It's very likely to work, but I would still do the effort and have a look at it, basically.
Okay, so that's something I probably have missed.
Right.
Whoops. Is it? Would you say the motherboard is probably the most common mistake? People like, okay, it matches the processor. I can put a card there. Why do I need a better motherboard? Or is it...
Right. So today, I think one mistake is if you go too cheap on the motherboard today, it does a lot more than it used to do, basically. So if you buy a good motherboard today, if you spend money on it, you're not going to need like a separate network card. You're not going to need a separate sound card and those things, because their own built sound cards and network card are actually really good. So in 99% of the case, or 90% of the case, you're not going to have to buy that separately if you go with something good from the beginning.
Okay, so to just close it all together, where do you start when you then build the computer? Do you have any, say, 3 tips or tricks actually building it?
Actually, you might like physically building the computer.
Building
That's a good one.
Maybe that's not your expertise.
Right. No, actually it is. I built hundreds of computers actually. So I in my own experience, I would say that just make sure that you have enough time, because doing it in stress is always not nice. And you should also make sure to have a lot of space. So you can like sort your boxes and the screws and everything like that, and keep that together. That's like 2 of my like most important tips, like physically building it. And I think the rest of it usually is quite easy to come
kind
together.
of straightforward.
Yeah, it's quite straightforward, and you could YouTube this right now. So it's that's also probably my third tip in that case, that there's a lot of great information out there right now.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you very much, Emanuel, and thank you all for listening.
All right.